Welcome to Everything Health, produced by the A. Philip Randolph Institute. This evening, we'll be discussing healthcare in America. So please sit back and enjoy, and at any time during the show, you can post a question by simply using the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your Zoom application. And your question could be featured during our Q&A segment later in the show. Once again, welcome, and sit back and enjoy as we start the show.
Oh, there you are. There you are for sure.
All right.
Good evening, APRI friends and family. We're very fortunate this evening to have our president, Sister Cleola Brown, who will be moderating this webinar this evening. And we have a good brother hailing from St. Petersburg, Florida. So all those APRI members in Florida, call them up, tell them to tune in to A. Philip Randolph Institute, Everything Health. I want to thank everybody for joining in this evening and all of those who are returning attendees, returning guests. Thank you so much for your continued support. Hope that you have enjoyed the previous shows, but tonight's webinar should really be exciting, enlightening, and of interest to just about everybody, because most of us know somebody who suffers from the pain of addiction. We know people who are in recovery. And so Dr. Jordan this evening, the Reverend Dr. Jordan, will take us on the journey from addiction to recovery. So with that, let everybody hear the voice of our president, Sister Cleola Brown.
Oh, my. Thank you, Brother Mason. You have done, before we even get started with tonight's guest, I wanted to say publicly, you have done an unbelievable job with this piece on everything health. And tonight we're really excited to have a chance to listen to and talk with the Reverend Dr. P. Jordan Jr. And if you're like Fred, he insists on the junior being announced. But Brother Mason, just like always, you bring the best guests to us. And the question and answer period at the back end gives us an insight and an opportunity to really get to know our guests a whole lot better. So my comments will be really brief because our guest tonight, the founder and president of Hope Alive Ministry, will be continuing our discussion on another aspect of our health and spiritual journey. Dr. Jordan, my understanding is that your ministry focuses on those who suffer from the disease of addiction and their families. In particular, we're asking that you be offering a message of hope to those who agonize over the addiction of drugs and alcohol. And for Dr. Jordan's story itself is one which will impress and inspire you. He is the author of The Pipe in the Pulpit, which provides detailed insight into his own personal journey. But tonight we will hear straight from the preacher's mouth. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jordan to APRI's Everything Health webinar. And we want to remind, we want to remind the audience, because I'm anxious to just shut up myself. We want to remind our audience that you can place your questions into the Q&A box, which will be considered, if possible, during Dr. Jordan's presentation or at the very end, because I don't plan to interrupt him not one more time. So please remember to give your first name and where you're from when you put your questions or some response to tonight's program. Dr. Jordan, thank you so very much for being here tonight. We're excited. And now I will hush.
Thank you so much. I want to, first of all, give honor to God who do all the honor and the glory. And I want to thank you, Madam President Brown, for and my dear friend and fraternity brother, Fred Mason, for inviting me to take a part in everything health. I was looking at some information today by Associated Press. News that came out today that there are an estimated 100,000 individuals in America who have died in the past year from overdose due to drugs and alcohol. When we talk about overdoses, we're actually talking about drugs, but most people don't think about alcohol as being a drug because it is legal.
Mm.
But there are more people who die each and every year from alcohol-related deaths because alcohol is used more than any other drug in America.
Mhm.
It's just not focused on because we have a liquor store on every corner, a bar and a lounge, and it's so easily, ready. It's so, when I say it's ready, it's almost like Ready Rock.
Mm.
Ready Rock was cocaine that was compressed. Let me just talk a little bit about addiction, what it is. Simply, addiction is no more than obsessive and compulsive behavior. And when an individual gets caught up into obsessive and compulsive behavior, we can become addicted to a person, a
Mm.
place, or a thing. So when we talk about addiction, the first thing that people normally think about is drugs. I like to ride a motorcycle. I like to play golf. I like fried chicken. Most Black preachers do like fried chicken.
Oh, I don't say anything, but yes.
I can become addicted to either one or all of them. And so therefore, seeing that I know that I suffer from the disease of addiction,
Mm.
then I have to be careful about whatever I do. I can become addicted to work. I was talking to my son night before last, and I've just come out of the hospital from having a stent put in my arteries. And my son was talking to me on the phone, and he was telling me, he said, "Dad, you're always working." And when he said that, I took a self-inventory and I realized that he was right. I have my office in my home, and my wife told me the day before yesterday, she said, "When was the last time you stood up?"
Mm.
So those who suffer from the disease of addiction can be caught up into their addiction, whether it's addicted to a person, a place, or a thing, and you can get caught up in it and not even know it. The first drug that I ever took, I was living in Baltimore. My father was a pastor, and I was coming home from school one day, and a friend of mine told me he was having a party at his house. I believe it was on a Friday night, and I lived about a block and a half from his house. I was living about 2 blocks from Morgan State University at that time. I was living in Morgan Park. And so the night of the party, it had snowed.
Mm.
And I was like 17, always big for my age. So I had gone to the liquor store and running on a lie that most people have heard. And that is that if you drink vodka, your breath won't smell. For me running on that lie, I ordered a half pint of vodka, walked to my buddy's house, and they had a party, back in those days, 66, 60, 67, we had house parties and strobe lights and all that sort of thing. And I had on I'll never forget, I had on a mohair sweater. And so when I got to the party, I hid the half pint of vodka outside in the snow. And I decided that I was going to wait till it got cold, and a certain time I would get up and go drink. So anyhow, I'm in the party. I decided, well, now I need to go and check out this vodka. I went outside, picked up the bottle, it's nice and cold, drank the whole thing inside of 2 or 3 minutes, not knowing what I was doing. I don't really have to go into what happened. You all know what happened. That was my beginning of alcohol. I didn't know what I was getting into.
Mm.
That was my last year of high school. My second year of college, I was at Morgan State University. I was at a fraternity party on Utah. I think it was an Alpha party. And I went into the bathroom, and it was some kind of a club or something. And when I went in the bathroom, they had 2 urinals there. I'll never forget this. So I'm at the urinal taking care of my business, and these two fellas came in the bathroom, and when they came in the bathroom, they locked the door. Now I turned around and saw them locking the door, and I'm wondering what in the world is going on. Now I had heard about marijuana and rolling joints. I had heard about that. And so they were rolling a joint up over by the sink. And so when I turned around and went over to wash my hands, they were smoking a joint. And when I came over there, they passed it to me. One of the solutions to drug and alcohol addiction is don't take that first drink. Don't take that first drug. And I took that joint from that brother just like I was smoking a cigarette, because I used to smoke cigarettes. I didn't think twice about it, but I realized that it was from what they call pressure, social pressure. There's another name for that that escapes my mind right now, but a lot of times we do what we do because we are in the company of others who are doing it. And so therefore, to save face, I automatically took that joint. I did what they did. I took a hit off of it, went out back into the party, and I would never forget. I started slow dancing with this girl, and I must have asked her what her name was about 40 times. But now, even though it was fun in the beginning, in the recovery world, we call it being off to the races. And that was between 1966 when I first smoked the marijuana. But now I go back to 1958 when I was 10 years of age. My father smoked cigarettes, and many kids, they want to be just like dad. And so my father would leave these cigarettes around, and so I would take his cigarettes, and I would go up into the bathroom because we lived in the country, and I would go up into the bathroom and lean out the window and smoke cigarette, a half a cigarette, because he would cut his packs of cigarettes in half. So he would have 40 smokes, 40 smokes instead of 10, whatever. And so even though I have heard so often that marijuana is a gateway drug, I have learned that my gateway drug was a cigarette.
Yeah.
Because it was much easier for me to smoke that joint than it would have been because I had already smoked cigarettes. And so the last drug that I used was cocaine. No, the last drug that I used was alcohol. And that was October the 13th. Really, it was October the 12th, 1988. And I was a pastor. I had been a pastor for 11 years. My drug use had escalated to the point where I wanted to die. I wanted somebody to kill me.
Mm,
I wanted to die. I was running on a death wish because let me put it like this. Let me put it in the vernacular of today. We have more people dying today in addiction and overdoses because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And the deaths, the increase, 30% increase in the deaths between 2020 and 2021 have been because of isolation.
mm,
So when individuals are isolated and are taken away from being able to communicate with others, they will do what is convenient, which is use a drink or a drug to take their minds off of their loneliness, their isolation, their homelessness, their joblessness. And so my isolation was because I was a drug addicted alcoholic pastor,
mm,
educated. I mean, when I was drug and alcohol addiction will cause you to be stupid, and it alters your mind. The second step in the 12-step program says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Once I went into treatment, October the 13th, 1988, I thought I was a bad person. I thought that God had forsaken me, but that's where I got an education on what addiction is, who can suffer from the disease of addiction, and the solution to that. Prior to that, I was running on hearsay.
yeah.
Hearsay has killed a lot of people and kept a lot of people from getting clean and sober. And so when I went into treatment in 1988, I got educated. When I went into the first session, they started talking about what addiction was, what alcoholism was. My eyes began to be open. I have a legal size pad right here. I had a legal size pad that I took into every meeting of those 28 days that I was there, and I learned what addiction was. Not only did I learn what addiction was, I made up in my mind that I was not going back. Thank you, Jesus. I was not going back to where I was, because now I had some handles on what I needed to do to overcome my malady, to overcome my addiction, to overcome my alcoholism. One of the reasons why so many people relapse and die is because, number one, they don't either have a sponsor so they can get a working knowledge of what it is to overcome your addiction. And number two, is because they're not willing to do the work that's necessary. But I have a slogan. I have a slogan because I've been working in this field now. I've been in recovery for 33 years, been working in the field for 32 years. I've got a radio broadcast in Baltimore on Heaven 600. It's been on it for 30 years. Saturday mornings, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, dealing with addiction. Brother Fred's been on there. And so what we do is, our whole mission of Hope Alive Outreach is to give people hope who suffer from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol. And the reason why God ordained me and anointed me to do what I'm doing. I don't give a hoot about what people think about me at all. I speak all over this country. You know, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, Snapchat, you name it, we're on there. And I share from my own experiences,
Yeah, yeah.
the horrors of addiction, but the magnitude and the magnificence of recovery. I use the word recovery because that's the terminology that we use in 12-step programs. Narcotics Anonymous, recovery. Alcoholics Anonymous, we use the word sobriety. However, there's also another word that I use that's closer to me than recovery and sobriety, and that is deliverance.
Mm. Mm.
The whole key to anyone being relieved or being, how can I say it? We use the word arrested in the program. I'll use the word, I use whatever words necessary depending upon who I'm talking to. Paul says in the New Testament, I'm going to be the man for whoever needs me. In other words, when in Rome, I'm going to do like the Romans do, so I can communicate to the Romans what addiction is, what alcoholism is, and how to get over it. See, because we have something known as the 12th tradition, which says anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all of our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personality.
Mm.
That means if I'm in a meeting, AA meeting, or I'm in an NA meeting, then you're not supposed to tell anybody that you saw me there. Anonymity means bearing no name.
Mm.
Also, one of our traditions talks about we have no opinion on outside issues. Thus, whenever we're dealing with press, radio, and TVs, then we are to remain, anonymous. And I believe that. But when I come but when God leads me to helping other people, I cannot remain anonymous.
Mm. Mm.
Dr. Jordan,
Yes.
let me ask you a question. What was the impact of your addiction on your father and mother?
My father was dead. My father died in 1980. I got clean in 1988. My mother was devastated, but my mother was a part of addiction. Using drugs and alcohol will make you crazy, even though the second step talks about insanity.
Mm-hmm.
To me, they're the same. I told my wife, because I was married to my wife for 7 years before she knew I was using drugs. She knew I was drinking, but she didn't know I was using drugs. One day she went in my sock drawer and found some joints rolled up in a sock. And so she found that out. And then she started watching my behavior. And then once she knew I was dealing with cocaine and some other things, she started getting irate. And I told her if she ever told anybody, especially the bishop, that I was using drugs, I told her I would kill her.
Wow.
And at that time, I meant that because I was out of my mind. So, and the reason why I was out of my mind was because of the isolation, couldn't talk to anybody. I'm pastoring a large church in Baltimore. I'm telling kids in the neighborhood and in the church not to use drugs, bringing the police department in there, showing them drugs, giving seminars and all that sort of thing. And I'm walking around with sunglasses on, high as a Georgia pine, and the sun not even out. Because I couldn't understand what was going on. But once I understood what was going on, once I went to treatment, and once I've been doing this for a while, I realized that God chose me to do what I'm doing. So we've helped thousands of people all over. We have something on the radio, on Facebook, 5 days a week. It's called A Dose of Hope. I do this from 3 to 5 minutes, where I'll share a message of hope to people. And I put the rubber down there where the road is.
Okay.
Really, if I'm talking to somebody who is suicidal, I know what to say.
Because you've been there.
Because I've been there.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I speak, this coming Sunday, I'll be in Baltimore at Israel Baptist Church over there on Chester Street. My good friend, Pastor Holly Wilson, I'm going to be speaking over there at 9:30, and afterwards doing a book signing. My book, and they can put that up right now. My book is called The Pipe and the Pulpit. I think that's it's a very not only a catchy title, but it's also poignant because the pipe signifies what I was doing while I was preaching.
Lord have mercy. Hmm.
But one thing I never did, I never got high before I preached. Now afterwards, Sunday afternoon was a different story. But I was caught up. People get caught up. One of the go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please finish your thought because I do want to ask you a question.
One of the misnomer. It is a misnomer to believe that the majority of drug addicts are in the lower class and on the street. That is a misnomer. The overwhelming majority of drug addicts and alcoholics are in the middle and upper class of America. And the overwhelming majority of drugs that are consumed are not on the corners, but they're in the plush
Right.
mansions.
Yeah.
And
I know.
hey,
It's
I can remember one evening they had a high-rise downtown Baltimore, Sutton Place.
Sutton Place.
Sutton Place. It's called Sutton Place. And one of my friends was a judge. Another one was a school teacher. Another one was a fireman. And we're sitting up in his magnificent apartment, smoking marijuana and snorting cocaine. And the television was on, and they had just had this big bust of marijuana in Baltimore down at the harbor. And I said, man, I wonder where did all that marijuana go? And the judge said to me, Bison, what you think we smoking now?
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy.
Drugs and alcohol, the drug market could not survive if it were not for individuals in high ruling positions in this country. However, there's a message of hope that God has me given to people. And they need to know that you can recover. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to die. You don't have to have an OD. You don't have to do that. I mean, I've buried a lot of addicts. I'm talking about from suicide, from hanging themselves, to being shot in the back of the head, being shot in the face because of drugs. So, when I go places and I give it to them raw, I mean raw. It's like raw dope. All dope fiends, they think they died and gone to heaven if they can get some raw dope. And when I say raw dope, I mean it's like almost pure. And so now, God, I told people when I was in Baltimore, I tell them now, treat me like the dope man, only call me the hope man.
Ooh.
My name is the Hope Doctor. And that's my ministry. People want to get in contact with me, they can go to my website, which is Hope Alive, www.hopealiveoutreach.org.
Maybe Dave could put that up. Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
HopeAliveOutreach.org, www.hopealiveoutreach.org. That's number 4 on the screen. No. Yeah. Wait a minute. Facebook. No. HopeAliveOutreach.org, www. That's number 2 website. That's right. You can the T-shirt that I have on now is called the Hope Doctor. The Hope Doctor. And you can get one of those. You can also get my book there. And we have a pen. There's a pen that I have here. This is a Hope Doctor pen that you can get. We'll send you one of those pens if you get the book. In the book not only talks about my life, but it also gives some spiritual principles on how you can get clean, how you can get some sober, and it also gives information to be helpful to families. Families suffer just as much as the addict and the alcoholic. They suffer.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so my ministry is not only for the addict, but also for the families. And sometimes I will be ministering to the families when the addict doesn't want to hear what I have to say. And so, unfortunately, well, unfortunately, we have a saying, some of us have to die in order for others to live.
Mm, mm, mm.
And
Mm.
you know, and in the gospel, in the word, in the Bible, it shows how everybody is not going to be saved. Some
Mhm.
people just going to die and go to hell.
Mm.
You know, because nowhere does it say that, oh, now that Jesus died, we don't need hell anymore. Hell is still there. And morticians are having a field day right now.
My
But anyhow,
God.
if you
Whew.
want to get in contact with me, our email address is info@hopealiveoutreach.org. info@hopealiveoutreach.org. If you want me to come and speak at your organization, at your conference, I'll speak and talk to people about what it is, and I'll preach a message, a sermon that deals with that, so that I can reach the masses, because I had a woman in my church when I was in Baltimore her son was about 30 years of age. He was living with her. She knew he was an addict. She was downstairs in her kitchen one morning. She heard something go boom on the floor. She went upstairs. There her son OD, needle in his arm. To show you how families are distraught, she took the needle out of his arm. She tried to revive him. There was blood all on the bed. She changed the sheets on the bed. She did all of that before she called the police and the ambulance. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. The majority of addicts here in St. Petersburg, Florida, are not out there on the street. They're in the high-rise senior citizen buildings. Why? Because once you get over 60, 65, you start taking these medications, oxycodone and other opioid-based pain relievers. And unfortunately, many of these senior citizens are addicted. They don't know it. They're alcoholics. They don't realize it. They didn't start drinking until they retired, and they're full-blown alcoholics. And they found out that they can go out, send somebody out on the street, purchase some heroin quicker and less expensive than the prescription at Walgreens. Now, isn't that a mind opener? You know, you got 75. I got a friend of mine. We go to meetings all the time. Was telling me about a buddy of his last week who relapsed. He relapsed. He's 74 years of age. He relapsed and went back to using cocaine. And cocaine is not addictive. Heroin is addictive, but cocaine is mentally addictive. It's all a mind game. That's what cocaine does. Cocaine puts you up on a certain kind of a high that you want to get back there. Alcohol is physiologically addictive. So is heroin, opioids, but cocaine is not. Nicotine is addictive. Marijuana is addictive. So you don't, if you look around and if you've had addiction in your family, if your mama was an alcoholic, if your daddy was an alcoholic, or your uncle shot dope, or your grandmama, was an alcoholic, be careful because it's in your family. And addiction can come and sweep through a whole family. It might miss a generation, but it'll pick up the next generation. It's passed down through the genes. But everybody who drinks is not an alcoholic. And I used to get so mad, I go to the bar and somebody sit up there and they can sit on a beer for 2 hours and get up and leave half of it on the bar. And I say, how do you do that? Everybody's not an alcoholic. But if you gotta get a drink every day, and if you find yourself drinking when you don't want to, or using a drug when you don't want to, you're addicted. I think I just said something major.
I've heard about the concept of interventions. That's where family members get together and sort of forcibly try to get an addict into recovery.
That's
How
what happened to me.
effective are the-
That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me on Friday, October the 13th, 1988. I had just bought this, I was living on this farm and I had just bought this racehorse and I was going to bring him home. So I was sitting at my kitchen table talking to the man who was going to put a fence up around my place so the horse would have a place to run. And it was a knock at the door. 9 o'clock in the morning. I went out to open the door and my mother's standing there with my sister. I said, "What? Y'all, why y'all here?" And before I could say anything, I opened the door for them to come in. And I looked, and behind my mother and my sister was my mother-in-law, was my best friend, and 2 high ruling officials that came from the bishop's office. And I said to myself, oh, and I had been going to this white Episcopal priest who was trying to get me clean and sober, and I had been lying to him. I was lying to him. And he came in, the only white person in there, and he came in, and I said, what in the world is this? This white man told me, shut up, Basha, and go in the living room and sit down. I said, and you know what I did? I shut up with the living room, sat down. He put that man out of my house, was going to put the fence up. And they went around in a circle, and all of them told me of some incident where they had noticed I was out of the norm. And each of them said, everything will be all right, Bashi, if you do the right thing. Everybody said that. So when it got around to the end, I said, what's the right thing? And they said, you got to go into treatment today. And they said, the bishop already knows. I was sitting on a low couch. And when they said the bishop already knows, I jumped up, my head almost hit the ceiling. So I knew. I knew what the right thing was. I went to treatment that day. Intervention. But intervention will only work if the drug addict or alcoholic has something to lose. Job, wife, husband, children. Other than that, or they have hit bottom and they're seeking help. And most addicts have to hit that before they can be helped. You were going to ask me something, Sister Brown.
I was going to say to you that in the early portion, you said that you give it to people raw when you speak to them.
Yeah.
And that's very true, because tonight it was easy for me to be quiet and listen because the message was raw. It was also painful, but I think that it gave the message that needed to be heard about the reality of addiction and the promise of hope somewhere along that line in a number of ways. It's difficult. It's difficult when it's a family member that you love or a friend that you respect, or even listening to you because of the peer pressure. It was very hard, even personally, to deal with the idea that I am an addict. But you did it. You did it. And how many years now is it that you're clean?
33 as of October the 13th of this year.
33 years clean.
That's right.
Well, that is
33 years being clean and clean, sober, and delivered.
Lord have mercy.
I've been delivered. Really.
Did your congregation ever, members of your congregation ever come to you privately to talk about their own personal addiction? Or do they always bring someone that's in their life that need to hear you speak?
What I'm getting ready to, pardon me?
Or can you answer that one?
I'm getting ready to say something that's the truth.
Okay.
And church folk need to hear this. I've been I had been pastor this church for 5 years. Loved the people. The church grew. And when I came out of treatment after 28 days, I waited 3 days and I called a church meeting because for 28 days, the people didn't know where I was. My wife didn't tell them. And the bishop saw to it that they would not tell anybody. When I came back, I could tell them whatever I wanted. At that time, AIDS was prevalent. So the rumor was that I had AIDS.
Whoa.
So the importance of having a sponsor, I have a sponsor today, even after 33 years. When I got out of treatment, I had a sponsor that very day I got out. That was a blessing. And when I met with him on that Saturday, he told me, he said, Basha, I wouldn't do this if I were you. I wouldn't, that meeting, he said, no, I wouldn't do it if I were you. I thinking I know everything, I did it. I did what was known as I did a 5th step in front of the people, and I hadn't even worked step 1 yet. All right. I called that meeting. The church was packed. And I got up and told the people what I had been doing with my life and how I was an addict and alcoholic, and I had been using drugs and alcohol all this time. After I finished, the choir sang, people cried. Was one lady walked up to me. She said, Reverend, I love you, but I wish you hadn't told me.
Oh.
She said that. The next day is when they had this campaign to get rid of me. And the people in that church gave me hell. I stayed there for another 3 years. But the church people treated me worse than people in the world.
Lord have mercy.
Talked back to me when I was preaching, wouldn't shake my hand, went out the side door rather than to come in the other door. But I found out something that people need to know, and that is the people in the church who treated me the dirtiest were the ones who were suffering from the disease of addiction, just like I was, but couldn't tell anybody. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it.
But that
Yes,
message
indeed.
was received.
I'm
That
telling
message
you,
was received.
there was a woman in my church, biggest family in there. She stopped coming to church. Now for 5 years, I've been hugging this woman on Sunday morning at the door. I smelled alcohol on her breath, but I never said anything. This woman left the church. She turned 90% of her family against me. I couldn't understand why. But her sister loved me. One day her sister came to me and said, Reverend, I think you need to go to the house to see my sister because she's drinking too much.
Lord have mercy.
I went to her house, my garb, knocked on her door. Nobody answered, knocked on the door again. I turned around, put my back to the door, waiting for her. I'm saying, what's going on? So I turned around real quick, and there she was peeping out of the blinds, but she never came to the door. A week later, she was dead. They found a half a gallon of, guess what? Vodka beside her. Her family took the funeral out of my church. They didn't have it at my church. They had it at another church. But the pastor was a good friend of mine. And of course, I was going to go to the funeral. This woman had 12 children. One of them I had gone to school with. He and I graduated from school. So I'm sitting in the pulpit of this other church, and the pastor asked me to get up and speak. And I spoke. Supposed to be just words of, condolence or whatever.
Mhm.
By the time I sat down, the preacher stood up. He said, I don't need to preach now. So people who are in the church, and I hope that there's some church people listening to this, need to come off their high horse and get humble and get more godly. The foundation of recovery and deliverance is having a higher power in your life that you got a one-on-one personal relationship with. And if you don't have that, you're going to have difficulty giving up drugs or alcohol or work or motorcycle or golf or whatever you're addicted to. It is because there is a break in your spirituality. I have a book here that I minister from. It's called Serenity.
Mhm.
Serenity, a companion for 12-step recovery. I'm going to read this, then I'm going to close down. It says, perhaps our most basic needs for love and nurturing were not met in our early family days, or we may have been smothered by overzealous caretakers who did not allow us to mature emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Such dysfunctional families, whether they involved open or veiled abuse, may be the original source of our codependent pain. This early codependent vacuum becomes the root of our later adult addiction. People who are addicts and alcoholics, all they really trying to do is find love and compassion and understanding. And that's what 12-step programs do.
Wow. Wow.
Dr. Jordan, this has certainly been inspirational, informative, and educational. But we are at 6:45, and I do think that we should give some of our audience the time to raise questions. So can we do that now? And then we'll come back, and you and President Brown will certainly have the last word. But I looked at the list, and I know that there are some folks out there that probably have some questions or comments for Dr. Jordan. So you can either put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A.
There are some in the chat, Brother Mason.
Okay.
Valda McKinney, for example, has asked the question, the effect an addictive person has on their loved ones is overwhelming. What advice do you have for them to get the help they need to survive and help their loved ones?
The first thing I would do is to say to the family members, you are the most important person in your life, not your mama, not your son, not your daughter. Because if you were to die today, they will go on living. So the first person you got to take care of is yourself. The second thing I would say would be to go to Al-Anon. It's called A-L-A-N-O-N. Al-Anon. And if you have some children in your house, let them go to Alateen. You can look it up on the World Wide Web, Al-Anon or Alateen. Because if you cannot get help for your loved one, you need to mend your own wounds. The third thing I would say is, if your son or daughter or loved one is an addict or alcoholic, don't enable them by giving them money every time they ask you. And if they're deep into alcoholism, if they're deep into drug addiction, and I'm getting ready to tell you the truth, if they're deep in it, watch them if they come to your house, or don't let them in at all. Alcoholics, addicts will steal from their mama, their children, their brothers. I'm telling you, and it's not because they want to. It's because they have to. They got to feed that demon. They gotta do it. Like a vampire gotta suck blood. An addict has got to have drugs. An alcoholic has got to have alcohol. And they will go to any lengths to get it. Now, the flip side of that is when you are in recovery, you go to any lengths to keep what you have.
Mhm. Whew. I was told tonight would be powerful, and by God, it's been powerful in a whole lot of ways. I want to thank you so very much for being a part of this important series of healthcare issues for us.
Praise
But
the Lord.
more than that, keeping it real and keeping it strong. So I think this is absolutely one of the best presentations that we've had that talks about today and right now. And Velda's question, who is in Miami, Florida, as she asked her question, is just paramount and very, very similar to what we hear all across the country from different parents who will pull us to the side. I hope we are recording this, Dave, because if we're not, we're just going to have you again when Fred restarts the series, because I know that there are many more questions that will come as a result of folks thinking about what you said.
Yeah.
So for my part, I want to say thank you from a very special place, both the piece of a parent, of an individual, and as a practicer of the religious faith. So it's really, really a pleasure to have you here. But more than that, it's empowering. So Fred, I give it back to you.
And again, brother Dr. Jordan, thank you again for that very powerful message of hope. And I just want to share with the audience that even though we said that these webinars are intended to be educational, the main thing is that we want folks to know whatever your challenge is, that you are not alone. So if you have a problem with addiction, if you have a family member that's having a problem with addiction, know that you're not alone. You know, find a support network. Somebody told me one time, because I have a loved one who's addicted, and all the stuff that you were saying is so true. You can't give them money. You can't buy your way out of their addiction. Most of us don't have enough money. You know, so if we try to help the addict support their habit and their lifestyle, guess what? You're gonna end up with two broke people, two broken people. So the best thing is try to do an intervention, get the person to get some help, some serious help. Don't be an enabler. One of the things that has stuck with me is this brother told me, Fred, you can't get in the way of angels. You know, the people have their destiny and they have to want to be clean. They have to want to recover. So with that, any last words before we sign off? I just want to say again, thank you so much, Dr. Jordan.
Well, let me say this. I want to advise individuals to get my book. That way you can have it in your hand, a manual. How do you deal with your loved one? How do you deal with yourself? Where can you get some help? You can write to me at info@hopealiveoutreach.org. That's info@hopealiveoutreach.org. Go to my website. See what we're doing in the community. Down here in Florida, in St. Petersburg, Florida, once a year during Christmas time, our organization has what is called Santa Claus toy giveaway on Christmas Eve. And there's one of the largest housing developments in the country is named after my grandfather. It's called Jordan Park. And we, on Christmas Eve from 3 to 5, I play Santa Claus. My wife is Mrs. Santa. And we have our elves, and we just give away toys to kids. And this year we give away toys and clothes. So if you'd like to donate, you can donate on our website. I don't do this for money. And I'm gonna say it again, I don't do this for money. I don't need money. God has blessed me. Like Snoop Dogg says, I'm living the best life. I am. I am. I am. And I thank God, and it's only because I stopped using a drink or a drug. Really, else I'd be dead or in some mental institution. So you can call me. Call me. I don't mind talking to you because listen, the only way I can keep what I have is by giving it away.
Mm.
And that's the same thing Jesus told his disciples. He said, go ye therefore into all the world and preach and teach the gospel and baptize, make disciples. God ain't saved me for me. He didn't deliver me from drugs and alcohol for me. He did it for you. And don't be ashamed. If you're not ashamed to stand on that corner and buy crack, don't be ashamed to call the Hope Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jordan. President Brown, President has to have the last word.
Well, I've already said my last word, and again, I will echo you, Fred. Thank you
Okay.
so very much for bringing some of the strongest, most powerful and truthful speakers to this series of dialogue. Thank
All
you
right.
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me.
And I want to thank our audience. We won't have a webinar next week. But when's the next one? December the 1st. We will have a brother named Matthew Brown from Lyona talking about something I saw Bert on here earlier. He will be talking about work and health. And after that, we're bringing December the 8th, we're bringing back Vernon Williams to talk about caring and giving as we go into the season. We're going to be talking about that from a male perspective, because many of us think of caregivers and we initially think about females. But Vernon, anyway, I'm not going to tell this story. That's December the 8th. Make sure you tune in. Again, thank you, Dr. Jordan. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for having me.
All righty.
Thank you, Dave, for your work. Thank you, everyone that came tonight. Thank you so much, Peggy. Glad and I see you. I see a bunch of you as these pieces roll down. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the support. We appreciate all of it. And we will have you back for sure.
Praise the Lord.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
could we show his book as we close out?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Clay, they not leaving.
I'm watching the numbers. I am watching the numbers.
That's fun. Thank everybody so much. Okay, and sending out a lot of love to the APRI family.